Hi everybody, for this lab example we're going to be looking at creating a client server program where the server is going to operate as a multi-threaded server and it will provide mortgage calculations for the clients. So we're literally just going to follow the lab step by step and we'll just iterate through the development of both the client and the server and how to get things up and running. So if you've been having any issues or problems with the labs, just make sure that you've kind of worked through this from start to finish. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fire Eclipse up. So just while that's going there, I'm just going to have a quick look at the lab. So we're just going to iterate our way down through this. Okay, so the idea of it is that we're going to create ourselves a socket server, which will be multi-threaded, that when a client connects, that we'll be able to perform some mortgage calculations for them and send back the figure for the monthly repayment. So the client will provide three pieces of information, which should be the annual percentage rate, the loan amount, and the loan duration. Our processing will happen on the server in a separate thread, and we will reply to the client with the monthly repayment amount. So, okay, so we'll kick it off. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set the server up first. So we're going to set up our server program. Okay. Okay, so I'm just waiting for Eclipse. Okay, just running a little slow for me. Okay. I'll just jump him up to full screen. Okay, so I already have the mortgage and the client done, so I am just literally going to, whatever I had done previously, I'm just going to get rid of. Okay. Okay. And my mortgage server. Delete. So literally starting clean. I have nothing in my project folder, okay? Now whatever else I have open, I will get rid of. Okay, so I said I was going to create the server first. So set up the server program. File, new project. So I select and go take Java project. Click next. Project name, I'll follow the convention of the lab, so mortgage server. Next. Happy enough with that. Finish. Okay, so see here that I have my mortgage server absolutely fine. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a Java class to my server project that's named mortgage server as well. And this is going to contain the main method. So it's going to be like the entry point for the program. This is going to include the public static void main. So file, new class, and I said I was going to call it mortgage server. And just check the box for public static void main. So just double check mortgage server. That's exactly what I want. I've ticked public static void main and I'm happy. Finish. Okay, so there it sits. So I have my public static void main, absolutely fine. I'm actually just going to test this straight away now to see that, that the architecture of the project or our Eclipse project is actually working correctly. So I'm just going to do a very quick system.out.println to put hello world out in the console window. So I'm just going to go system.out.println. And if we say we'll call it our hello server. Okay, so it's good just to test each incremental step that we do as part of our program development to make sure that it actually works. So each small bit that we'll do, we should test, make sure it's correct, and then move on. So iteratively, we'll break a larger problem into a smaller subsection of kind of smaller problems and build them that way. If something goes wrong, at least we'll know, the new addition that we've made is where the problem is. So just make sure that you save your program. So Control S, and then we'll just run. So nothing wildly complicated, but we should be getting hello server down here in our console window, which we are, so absolutely fine. Okay, so now we're going to, the next step that we're going to follow in the process is we are going to, so we've done our tests, so we are going to add a new class named Socket Server. So this class is going to offer all of the server socket functionality to our program. So what we're going to do is we'll have ourselves a socket server class, and then when we want to run the socket server inside our public static void main, we will create a new instance of our server socket class. So we'll instantiate the object, and then we'll call a method to run the server. So the first thing it's asking us to do is add a new class named to the mortgage server class named socket server. So very simply create a new class named socket server. So file, new class, and what did we say? It's going to be called socket server. Socket server, okay. Okay, hold on a minute. I'm just going to, it's gone a little funny on me, so I just have to be very careful where we place our objects. So file, new class. So I can very easily put the file into the wrong project, so just be very careful. So you can see I have a couple of things open here on the left hand side. It's very, very easy to get knotted up with this, so just be very careful that I suppose the sequence should be that you click on the appropriate folder, then go file, so we're actually really making sure that we're adding it to the correct project. So I said socket server, and that's absolutely fine. Okay, so I've added it in. So now I'm going to start into setting up the socket server itself. So I've public class socket server. So each socket we're going to offer given functionality that's going to run on our server, and we're going to offer the processing or business logic or whatever we want to call it over a given port. So a client can identify us on the network via a unique IP address and a port number as well. So we're going to set the port number up first. So int port number is equals to, what do we go for? Follow the lab. For the 4444. Okay, perfect. Now, that's my port number. Next, I'm going to create a server socket. So I'm going to define a server socket. Server socket. Give it a variable name of server sock, S-O-C-K-E-T. And we're going to set this to null. Okay, so you can see quickly that server socket's giving out, so we need to fix our imports. So I'm going to let Eclipse do the work for me. Click over here on the left hand side and then just double click import server socket, which is part of the java.net package. So absolutely fine. So see it up here, we have our import, and that's fine. So just make sure you save your project. Okay, perfect. So now we have our port number and we've created our server socket. So we are going to create a method now that we're going to use to run the server. So I'm going to create a method called public void, and we call it run server. Okay, public void run server, careful. Public void run server. And let's absolutely fine. Okay, just a little typo there, so just be careful. So we have our method, that's absolutely fine. So here we are going to add the logic to create a new server socket that's associated with our port number. So the syntax for this will be server socket is equals to new server socket for a given port number. And obviously we need to put some error checking in for it, so we'll put this inside a try catch. So try, and we'll say catch. So I usually just put the syntax of it in place first, and then I'll worry about what I'm going to do. So what I'm actually trying is server socket. So when I'm referring to server socket, I'm referring to my variable from up above. So server socket is equals to new, and for running over a given port number, which is our variable of port number. So this is going to create a new server socket for us running over our port, which is 44444. Absolutely fine. So we need to put a catch in place for this, so we'll just put it in as a general IO exception. E, and then just basic default of it will be system.out.println. This should only fire if something's gone wrong on us. I will say e dot get message. Okay, absolutely fine. So just save what we have. That's perfect. So that's our try catch. So that has set us up our server socket. So what we want to do now is instead of just operating a kind of a one-to-one connection between the client and the server, we'd like to be able to offer the functionality in a multi-threaded environment. So each time we accept a connection to the client, we want to put this into a separate thread. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a while loop in place. So we're just going to say while true. So this is an infinite loop. It's always going to keep looking for connections. So once again, I'm going to create a new socket that I'm going to call client socket, and this is going to be linked with the server. So the kind of scenario that we have here is that we run our server, and that any client program that's running that initializes a connection to the server can accept a connection. So we can do it with server socket.accept. So we always have a Boolean value, true or false, to decide whether or not we want to accept a connection from a client. So for our program, we are just going to accept every connection. So each time we accept a connection, we're going to create a new socket and store the connection there. So I'm going to put a simple try catch again in place, try, and I'm going to catch whatever. So what I'm going to put in place first is socket, client, socket, and we're going to say client socket is equals to, and then the new connection that we have is coming through the server socket that we've created. So the server socket that we have dot accept. Okay, perfect. So I'll fix my imports. That's fine. And now I need to do a catch on it. So once again, it's just going to be a general IO exception. E and system.out.println, and it's going to be e.getMessage, I suppose. Okay, perfect. So I'll save that, and I can see here that it's saying, we see the warning we have on client socket. So the warning is that the value is not actually used yet. So we're going to use this, but just not yet. So what we're really going to do is that we're going to accept our connection, and then we're going to fire off a new thread and put it here. So we haven't actually got the logic, excuse me, set up for this yet, but I'm just going to put a little message here, a little comment here to say that our new thread goes here. So we eventually will get a new thread going, and we're going to put the client socket, we'll inject that into an object. So we haven't set that up yet, so we'll leave that sit there for a minute. So make sure you save what we have. Okay. Okay, so the next step that we're going to perform is to create an object that we will pass to our thread. So we have two choices. Obviously, we will get our object to 1, extend the thread class, or 2, to implement the runnable interface. So the example that we're going to use for our mortgage calculator will be to create an object called mortgage runnable, and we're going to get this to implement the runnable interface. I'm just going to enter full screen mode. Okay, so we're going to a class will be created that will be designed to run in a thread. So we're going to create a new class named mortgage runnable that's going to implement our runnable interface. This will facilitate the object being passed into a given thread. So very simply, let's flip over to Eclipse. And be careful now, so click on Mortgage Server on the left and go File, New Class, and we said we'd call it Mortgage Runnable. So usually a little bit of a naming convention comes with this. Any object that we will create that's going to run in a threaded environment, usually we will append runnable to that object name. So we'll actually know by convention that this object has been designed to run in a given thread. So mortgage runnable, click finish. Okay, so now we need to set this up. So public class mortgage runnable. So we said earlier we have two choices. It either extends the thread class or we implement the runnable interface. So this time we're going to implement the runnable interface, which is basically we're just going to promise to follow the rules of this interface, which is to implement a run method. So implements runnable. Okay, so I'm just going to fix my little imports first. Public class. Okay, fine. So it's giving out already. That's because I haven't actually implemented the method yet. I'm just going to very quickly put it in. Public void run. Now everyone's happy. Brilliant. So save that. Okay. So inside our mortgage runnable class, we're going to pass in the socket that we had set up on our server. So we see over here, each time that the server socket has accepted a connection from the client, we're going to store this in a socket that we've named client socket. So when we're creating our mortgage runnable class, we are going to pass this client socket into the mortgage runnable object so that this object will now know how to communicate with the client that connected. So very quickly, we need to create a variable for this. I'm going to set this one as protected. Protected socket. I'm going to say same naming convention, client socket. Call it whatever we want really. Is equals to null. So let's set it to null. Okay, so socket's giving out. Let's fix it. Import socket. So import java.net.socket. Perfect. Okay, so now there it sits. So I have my public void run. That's brilliant. The logic that the thread is going to perform is going to go in here. So I suppose we'll just call it logic. So whatever problem that our mortgage runnable object is going to perform for us, that goes here. So what we need to do now is that we're saying here that we have a protected socket, client socket, and that when the object is created, we're going to pass this object off to run in a given thread. but we need to know, or we need to hold a reference to our client socket. So we need to get this information in. So we'll just inject this in via a constructor. So let's go for public mortgage, mortgage runnable, There it is. So this is our constructor. So when the object has been created, I'm going to pass in socket, client socket. There it sits, and then I'll just go for this dot client socket is equals to what's been passed in, socket. Perfect. So when we're instantiating the object, we're going to pass in the client socket that we've created, which is the connection that we've accepted from the client, and we're going to store this client socket here in our mortgage runnable object. So we're just going to use this to be able to communicate back and forward or to and from the client, via our streams. So we'll explain this later as we go. Okay, so that's absolutely fine. So now we're going to update the run method. So we said here, okay, excellent, logic goes here. So what logic? Well, we need to be able to read in information from the client program, and we need to be able to write information out to the client program. So it's a two-way communication. So we will use a buffered reader in to get the information in. So what we're going to do is that the client socket has its own input stream, or has its own helper method that's associated with it, which is get input stream. So we will use an input stream reader to take this input stream in, and then we'll use the buffered reader in to be able to read in the information or buffer it in and actually use it in our given program. So there's a number of ways to do it. So the example that we have in our lab is doing this all in one particular line. So I'm just going to break it up a little bit so we can see what's going on with it. So I'm going to start off with client socket dot, and it's going to say get input stream. So we're getting input from the client connection. So if the client's going to send us some particular information, we are going to take it in, okay? That's absolutely fine. The second bit that we're after is that we're going to create a new input stream reader to read in the information from our stream. So I'm just going to put him down here as new input stream reader. And then we pass something to that. And then equally, for the input stream reader, what we're getting from this, I'm going to pass that to a new buffered reader. So new buffered reader. So this is what we're actually using as part of our program. So the three pieces that we have here, obviously we're going to have to put them within a try catch, so that if anything goes wrong from an IO exception point of view, that we'll be able to handle it. So try catch whatever, and the whatever is going to be an IO exception. Oops. And then I'm just going to go whatever, e.print stack trace. Let it all go wrong. Okay, cool. So the first thing we said that we were going to set up our buffered reader. So okay, so I'm going to, inside my try, so I'm going to leave these here. I'm going to have to deal with these one by one somewhere, but I just put them there just so we'll know what we're doing. So I'm going to say that I have a buffered reader, and I'm going to call it in, and it's equals to new buffered reader. There it sits. Okay, so he's giving out, so we'll import our buffered reader. Okay, so we already have our new buffered reader there, so I'm going to get rid of this guy. So he's dealt with. So the next thing I'm going to take is that to the buffered reader, so we have our two lines here. So the first thing that we have is our get input stream. So the client socket.get input stream gets that for us. So I'm going to cut him, and I'm going to pass that to our input stream reader. Just be careful of the semicolons. I'm just going to get rid of this guy because he's going to be passed to the buffered stream reader. So we have our new input stream reader, and he is reading in the information from client socket.get input stream, which is fine. The buffered reader will read the information in from a given input stream reader. So I'm going to take this and pass that to the new buffered reader. And there he sits. So I'll just fix my imports, and that's absolutely fine. So I've done this as one inline, so I've buffered reader in is new buffered reader that is using an input stream reader to read in the information from the client connection. So we have a client socket connection, and the client socket connection has a method called get input stream. So any information that's been sent from the client to the server, we're able to access it via client socket.get input stream. We're passing that to an input stream reader, and then we're passing the input stream reader to the buffered reader, and that makes it easy for us to receive information from the client. So that's our information in. So now we need to deal with information out. So I'm going to set a Printwriter for this. So Printwriter out is equals to new Printwriter. And then I'm just going to put the brackets there first, and I'm going to call that whatever. So let's fix my imports first. Okay. Now, we mentioned earlier that we have our client socket, and the previous example we've used client socket.get input stream. So this time I'm interested in the server sending information to the client program. So instead of getting an input stream, I'm more interested in out. So I'm actually going to go for client socket.get output stream. I set him to true, so that's just the parameters that the Printwriter wants. So I'm interested in an output stream this time, so I have Printwriter out. Okay, that's absolutely fine. So the example that I'm going to set up is I'm going to try and get the simple hello world example going. So before I go off and do a lot of work into seeing how the client and server are going to do mortgage calculations and pass variables back and forward, etc., I actually want to see if I can get a basic interaction between the server and the client, i.e., can I get the client to send information to the server and display it, and equally can I get the server to send information to the client and display it. Once I have those working, well, I'll be confident that I've properly architected my solution for the client-server communication, and then I can move on with it. So I want to see this working first before I put any more effort into the development of my program. So string, I'm going to set up a string and I'm going to call it arg1. Argument 1, I'm going to take in some information from the client and store it into argument 1. So I need to read this information in arg1 is equals to, so we said we're using our buffered reader in to receive information from the client. So I'm able to get this via in, which is this variable here that's just highlighted in yellow, dot read line. So in that read line is that whatever information has been sent from the client, we'll capture it via the buffered reader in that read line, and we're storing it into our variable of argument 1. So very easily now I can just go for system.out. So we put whatever's been sent to us via the client, I'm just going to drop that out onto console. And I'm going to say .print line, I'm going to say that the client says, client says something to us, string concatenation arg1. Perfect. Now, so the client has sent us a message, so maybe we'll be a little bit friendly too and say something back to the client. So equally, if I want to send something from the server to the client, I will use my Printwriter, which is out, and that's going to send something from the server to the client. So I can go out dot print line, whatever my string is. So what will we say? Follow the example of the lab, which is thanks for the message. Doesn't really matter what it is. Okay, so everyone's happy. Okay, so that's a very simple little setup that we have. So we have created our mortgage runnable class, held the client socket object, which is of type socket, which is here. So that enables us to interact with the given client. And once we've that done, we're creating a buffered reader in and a Printwriter out to be able to send and receive information from the client's program. And all we're doing is that we're actually just testing that this works. So absolutely fine. Make sure you save that. And that sits absolutely fine for us. So now that we have created our mortgage runnable class, we can very quickly flip back to our server socket example. So we said that each time we receive a connection from a client, we're going to push this down into a new thread. So I'm just going to uncomment out my little example here. So now I'm going for new thread, and what I'm going to pass to it is a new instance of the mortgage runnable class, i.e. I'm going to instantiate the object, pass in the client socket, and let it go. So it's new mortgage runnable. What I pass into this then, via the constructor, is the client socket. And everyone's happy. So there it goes. So ideally, if this seems a little strange, what I could have done was mortgage. Sometimes it's hard to see exactly what we're doing when they're all in line. So mortgage runnable, I'll call it M, is equals to new mortgage runnable. APLE, and via the constructor I pass in client socket. There the object sits. So if I wanted to do it this way, I could have created the object, which is an instance of mortgage runnable, and passed that to the thread. So they're both the same. I'm just showing two different ways of it. It's just hopefully one versus the other will click a little bit for you. So now I've said I've created a new thread. I've passed in my variable M to the thread and told the thread to start, which is absolutely fine. So save that, and we will move. Let's see how we're getting on with our steps. So there's mortgage runnable. Okay, so we've updated our run method, excellent, and we've updated our server socket class. That's good too. Okay, so now where do we sit with regards to the problem we're solving? So the basic operation of the server has been implemented. So next, set up the client to see if the client can connect to the server and perform some basic two-way communication. So what we actually have is that the client or the server has actually, we've a kind of semi-operational server that's able to deal with concurrent connections. So the only way we can actually test if this is working or not is to implement a client. So that's going to be the next step. So we're going to set up the client's program. Okay, so the steps are asking us to create a new Eclipse Java application named Mortgage Client. Okay, so I'm just going to flip back ever so quickly. So I'm going to leave everything sit there. So I'm just going to go for File, New, okay, just be careful, New Project, the Java project, Next, and we said we're going to call it MORTGAGE Client. So Mortgage Client, Next, Finish. Okay, so you can see here we have our mortgage client and our source, and there's nothing within it. Absolutely fine. So we have to add a class to our client. So we're going to create a new class called Mortgage Client and add this to the project, and this is going to include our public static void main, which is going to be the entry point to our new mortgage client program. So we can go make sure mortgage client is clicked now. So we don't want to fall, or make sure that the file is going to be added to the correct project. So File, New, Class. And we said we will call it Mortgage Client. And I'm going to tick my box for public static void main, string args, and okay. Okay, excellent. So we've public class Mortgage Client, and then we have our public static void main whatever, and then our code goes here. Excellent. So now we have to update the client, and we need to tell the client how to connect to our new server socket program. So we have a few little things that we need to set up. So equally, the first thing, so we're saying that this is a program that's going to run in a networked environment, or basically over the net. So to be able to pinpoint the server in a network environment, we need to know the location of the server and the port that our program is running on. So to be able to find something in the network environment, well, we need to know the IP address of the server. So we'll store this in a string. So let's go string, and we'll call it, follow the lab example, we call it hostname is equals to, so the examples that we're running here is there's nothing wildly complicated about it. It's running on localhost. So it's 127.0.0.1. Fine. Oops. So there's my host name. Equally, we said that the server is running on a given port. So the client needs to know the port number that the mortgage calculator server is running on. So int port number is equals to, so we've already set this, it's 44,444. That's absolutely fine. So they're the two pieces of information we need. So now what we need to do on the client side is to actually create a socket, which will be our client socket. And we will try and connect our client socket to our server. So I'm going to create a socket, and I'll follow the same convention. I'll call this client socket. We'll even sit. Okay, so any imports that we need to fix, we'll fix along the way. And we'll let Eclipse do most of the heavy lifting for us. Okay, so now we have our host name, our port number, and our client socket. So same problem as we had on the server side. The client needs to be able to communicate with the server. So it needs to be able to send information to the server and receive information from the server. So we need information going in and out, which is fine. So if I want to be able to send information from the client to the server, I'm going to use a Printwriter. So we're going to just declare all these guys up here. So I'm just going to say print writer, and we call it out. So we follow the same convention as on the server side. So in and out. Import our Printwriter, double click him. Okay. And I'm going to need a buffered reader to receive information in. So he's going to give out 2, fix your imports. And the last thing I'm going to need is that I'm going to need an input stream reader to read the information in from the client socket's input stream, put that into the input stream reader, and then the buffered reader will be able to, I suppose, parse the information from the input stream reader. So I just need to get myself an input, input stream reader. We'll call this IR. So equally, we could have done this the same as the server side and kept them all in line, but I'm just going to do it 2 different ways, just so we'll get a look at the different ways of actually dealing with it. So what I need now is that I'm going to try and connect to the server socket or the server program that's running. So potentially there could be an issue with this. So we're going to have to do this inside a try catch. Try catch. Okay, so it's a simple try catch. Now the example that we have is that we're going to have 2 catches. One is going to be for an unknown host exception, and the other is going to be for a basic IO exception. So I'm going to have 2 catches. Just be careful of this, okay? Okay, so there they sit. So if this is if we're getting kind of confused with the brackets, you can do this. So you can kind of just, if the curly brackets or the nesting is causing you a little bit of problems, that's actually ends method. Just label them. And class. And you can kind of just get a feel then. So, okay, cool. So there's my try catch. That ends the try catch. That ends main. That ends the class. You know, if it's been a little bit problematic with the brackets, or it feels like each time you do this that you're spending time trying to sort them out, that's probably the best way to go with it. Okay, so inside our try, let's build up our logic. So we're saying that we already have our socket, client socket, so we're going to try and connect to the server. So I'm going to say client socket is equals to new socket, and I'm going to pass through this to hostname, which is the IP address of the server. So it's 127.0.0.1, and the port that it's running on, which is 44,444. We've stored that in our variable called port number. And that is absolutely fine. Semicolon. Okay, so now I have the client socket. So once the socket has been connected, so once I have actually got myself a client socket object, which, well, it's socket object stored in a variable called client socket, I should be able to perform input and output. So let's go after it. So I'm going to put a message in here saying create our IO streams. streams, so we know what's going on. So out is equals to new print writer whatever. What do we pass into our print writer? Well, the print writer is trying to communicate or send information from the client to the server, so I need to have the client socket's output stream. So very simply, client socket dot get output stream. Okay, that's fine. So that's out. That's out catered for. Now it's in. In is equals to new buffered reader whatever. What do we pass into our buffered reader? Okay, well, we need to pass in an input stream reader, so whatever we've read in from something. So we actually don't have that yet, so I'm just going to say IR is equals to new input stream reader. And what do we pass into an input stream reader? Well, I actually need an input stream, and that's coming from the client socket. Dot get input stream. And then, okay, that makes sense. So once I have my input stream reader, well, the buffered excuse me, the buffered reader wants an input stream reader, so I just pass in IR. Now everyone should be happy. Now, I am going to send two pieces of information. Well, I'm only going to send one. I'm going to send one piece of information from the client to the server, and then I'm going to see if the server is actually going to send me back anything. So how about I go for out.println, and what I'm going to send out is init calculation. So it could be anything, but I'm just saying, passing over a string called init calculation. Perfect. And now I'm going to see if the server gives us back anything. So I'm going to go for in dot readline. And what I'm going to read in is in.readline. Okay, leave him sit, so that's absolutely perfect. Now I actually might just do him inline. So the out.println is sending that over to the server, and then I'm going to read information in from the server here. But what I'm going to receive in is just going to be a string, so I need to output this. So I'm actually going to go for, I'll just jump them down ever so slightly, so I'm going to go system.out.println. It's either that or I store the result into a string, which I don't want to do. So I'm just going to take him from here. I'll bring him back up here. So system.out.println, and I'm going to say server says string concatenation in.readline. Okay, perfect. So I just have to deal with my exception handling. So the first one was our unknown host exception, which could very easily happen, i.e. when we're connecting, that host doesn't exist, so we have to have a catch for it. Fix our imports, import whatever, fine, and then we're going to go for e dot. Oh no, we actually, yeah, I'm not even that worried. If this has actually gone wrong, I'm just going to go for system dot exit. No recovery from this one. System dot exit 1, and I'll do the same for my IO exception. So no real fault tolerance to this. If something has gone wrong, I'm just going to close the program. IO exception E, and the same. I'm going to be lazy here. I'm just going to copy my line. Fix my imports and paste my friend in here, system.exit.1. Okay, so I can see here I've made a little mistake. So you can see a little red X here. So I have an extra semicolon in, so you have to be very careful when you're cutting and pasting. Take him out, and then everyone's happy again. Okay, so now we have got ourselves into a position that we should be able to test the application. Okay, cool. So now we're ready for a test run. So there's a sequence to this. So first step is to make sure nothing else is running. So kind of first time round it should be fine. Okay, I don't think I have anything running. Hello server, he should be fine. So nothing's running. So I'm going to click on the mortgage server, click run. Okay, so that should be fine. Then I click on the client. Now click run. And we're getting nothing. Okay. So we could be looking at it going, okay, that's a bit weird. So that makes perfect sense. When we come back to our mortgage server and look into our public static void main, all that we have here is system.out.println. We created a class that was called socket server that contains all of the logic for running our socket server over port 4444 and for managing the concurrency via threads, which is all great, but it's not going to work unless we actually call it. So here I have to go for socket server, socket server S is equals to new socket server, no constructor, fine. So that's my socket server. Inside socket server, we have created ourselves a method called run server. So now I need to call it s.run server, and there it goes. So I saved that. Now this is going to make a little bit more sense. So when I click on mortgage server and click run, that should, see, it's still running there for me. So the server is up and running now at the moment. So now I click on mortgage client. So when I run the client, it's going to send a message to the server, and we're going to receive a message back from the server, and we should see this on both sides. So we run him. Okay, so let's see how we're actually getting on with this. There's my server and there's my client. Okay, so we've just run our example and we're not getting our desired output. So what we've done is that for our new Printwriter for out, we need to append true to its constructor. Now what this does, by providing the parameter of true to the Printwriter, it's basically saying that we need to flush the output buffer. So every time we have, the client has gone for something.println or out.println to send information to the server or vice versa, is that once all of the information is kind of finished sending, we're going to flush the output buffer. So if this hasn't been dealt with, it basically just kind of pauses or stays there, and we're not actually getting any feedback for the communication that's been sent back and forward. Equally, it's not causing an error either, so it's just not going to run for us. So save that, and we're just going to test our application again. So we're up as far as running our application. So click on server and run. Okay, so the server's running. We have our client, and we run the client. Oh, excellent. Okay, so now we're getting, on the client side, client is saying, server says, thanks for the message, which is perfect. And you can see the little icon over here that looks like a monitor or a TV. Click him, and it's going to flip us over to the server's console window. And hello server, and the client says init calculation. So the communication has gone back and forward. Init calculation has been sent from the client to the server, and we can see that here that it's actually been received successfully, because this is the server's window. This is the server's console window. And equally, we set ourselves a while loop, always looking for connections. It's still running. You can see here that the cursor is running, and we're still waiting for more connections to be made. And if we go back quickly to the client, everything's absolutely perfect with this. So we have set ourselves up a kind of hello world example to some degree, in that we're able to send information from the client to the server, and that the server can read in the information and display it. Equally, I can send information from the server to the client, and the client can, I suppose, gather or receive this information and display it out as well. So we have two-way communication set up. So that's going to leave us with, we've run our server, we've run our client, we've got the expected output. Now, we said we were going to create a program that would do mortgage calculations. So now we need to add in a mortgage class. So the question is, where do we need to add this class? Well, the server-side functionality is going to hold or maintain our business logic. It's going to do all of the calculations for us. The client isn't going to contain any business logic. It's just going to make the request for that particular calculation or service to be performed, and we will return the result to the client. So we need to add a mortgage class to our server project. So very easy. Back we go, and we will create a new class that we'll call mortgage. Okay, so we click finish, and there it sits. Now, I've provided the source code for this class on web courses, so you can just go download it. There's a lot of typing involved with it, or if you actually solve the lab work from week 1, you'll have your own implementation of this class. Either way, I don't really mind, but if you're just working the example the whole way through, it's probably better just to use my one. So I have mine sitting here ready for me in Notepad++, so ideally just go get it and bring it in. So it's public class mortgage. I'm just going to copy this in now. What I usually do is that, I know the naming convention is hold true, but I'm actually just going to take the content of the class, and I'm just going to copy it, Control-C. So either way, whichever way you copy it in, just be careful with it. So I'm going to take that here, and I'm going to paste the content in here. And there it sits. So absolutely perfect. I'm not going to explain the basic operation of the mortgage class. All it's doing is that when we construct the mortgage object, we're passing in the annual interest rate, the amount that someone wants to borrow, and the loan period, i.e. let's say I'm paying 5% interest on a loan amount of €200,000 and I'm paying it back over 30 years. It's going to calculate, you can see here I have a method for it, for monthly repayments. It's basically going to perform a mathematical calculation and come back and tell me that for €200,000 at 5% over 30 years that you'll be paying €1,500 a month for whatever period. So absolutely fine. So I'm going to save that, Control-S. So that's sitting there nice and perfect for me. I'm just going to make sure I follow down through the lab. So the lab contains all of the code for this. There's no problem. So if you want to type it in, please feel free to do so. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to update the mortgage runnable class. So, question, why would we want to update this class? Well, the mortgage runnable class is the object that is being passed into a given thread to continue its processing. So this object needs to know how to perform a mortgage calculation. So I'm going to create a variable of type mortgage inside the mortgage runnable class, and I'm going to set it as private. So very quickly, I'm going to jump back into mortgage runnable, and right under the client socket that we have as protected, I'm going to go private, mortgage, M, or whatever meaningful variable we want to associate with it. Okay, so I'm going to save that, and we follow on with the lab. So we've added in our mortgage variable, which is going to basically hold a mortgage object for us. This is going to perform the calculations. Okay, so now we need to update the run method. So why would we need to update the run method? Well, the sequence of how our programs are going to communicate with each other are of importance to us. The client needs to send over the 3 pieces of information, which is the interest rate, how much someone wants to borrow, and how long it's for. And based on that, we'll perform a particular calculation. So we need to have something on the server side that's going to cater for this. So we've already architected our client to send over a message called init calculation. So the idea might be that when the server receives this, we'll realize, oh, okay, someone's actually going to ask us, or we've initialized contact to make a particular calculation. So once we've got init calculation, we will read in 3 variables from the client and then perform our calculation. So, okay, so I have it here. You can see the code's here for us. So inside our run method, I'm going to say if in.readline equals init calculation, then we're going to start our processing. So let's just set ourselves up with the if statement first. What are we on? Okay. So back we go to Eclipse, and we said we're going to do this in the run method. Okay, so I'm going to put it in right here. So I am going to start it off. So I'm just going to put a little bit of space in. So I'm going to have to change a substantial amount of code in the run method, and I just need to be careful with it. So I'm going to say if something. Okay, so I'll leave my if statements. I'm going to leave that sit, and now I'm going to think about what I'm going to do. So I said I'm going to read in a line. That's really easy. I use my buffered reader in dot readline. Okay, or readline string. Okay, my ID is just gone a little bit slow on me. Dot equals string comparison, and we want it to be equals to our string, which is init calculation. Okay, so if what the client has passed to us is a string which equals init calculation, then we perform the code block that's here. Else we ignore it. Primarily, we probably could have done some error checking here, but that's a different day's work. So within this, I am saying that I want to read in 3 pieces of information. So 3 strings. So I'm going to say string arg1, arg2, and arg3. Okay, and now I can just literally, if I have 3 strings, I can read them in. So arg1 is equal to, this information is coming from the client, so it's going to be in dot readline. Where are we going? Readline 1, excuse me, arg2 is equals to in dot readline, and arg3 is equals to in dot readline. Okay, so first I receive an init calculation from the client. That's kind of saying, okay, cool, we're going to fire into our code block. Then I'm going to receive 3 pieces of information from the client, which is going to be 3 strings, and I'm going to store them into arg1, arg2, and arg3. So I'll leave them here, and I can do whatever processing I wish on them. So obviously, I'm going to be passing them to my mortgage calculator class, which is trying to primarily deal with numbers. So I'm going to have to parse or convert my 3 string values into double values. So let's create 3 new variables. So the first one I'm going to create is double. Type double, and I'm going to say it's annual underscore, what do we say, interest underscore rate. Double annual interest rate is equals to double dot parse double string, which will be arg1. Okay, so I am converting the string value arg1 into a double, and I'm storing it in a variable called annual interest rate. Excellent. So the second one is going to be how much I'm borrowing, so double, and I'm going to call this one principal underscore amount. That's equals to, same as above, double dot parse double string of arg2, and the last one is double, and the length of the loan, which is years, duration underscore years, and that's equals to double dot parse double arg3, and everyone's happy. 1, 2, 3. Okay, excellent. So let's run through it again. Server runs, client connects. I am going to create an instance of an object called mortgage runnable and push it down into a given thread. I'm going to receive 3 pieces of information from the client, which is the annual interest rate, the principal amount, and the duration years. And based on these 3 values, I want to be able to perform some description of a mortgage calculation. So, okay, so now I'm going to just say that this dot m, which is our object above, is equals to new mortgage. So basically, mortgage. We're basically going to instantiate a new object of type mortgage, and in here I pass in annual underscore interest underscore rate, comma, principal amount underscore amount. Be careful the order you put these in. Obviously, the order that they're being passed in is going to mean something, so be careful. Duration underscore years, years. Excellent. So now I have this dot whatever. Okay, absolutely fine. So let's run down through my run method. I have my buffered reader in and Printwriter out. Should be familiar with this now at this stage. If I receive the init calculation from the client, I'm going to read in 3 values, convert the 3 values to numeric double values, then I'm going to instantiate a new mortgage object based on the 3 values. Okay, excellent. So the last thing I need to do now is that once this calculation has been performed, I need to tell the client. So this is really easy. So I'm going to go out dot print line, and I'm going to go, so the object knows how to perform the calculation, so I'm just going to go this dot m dot, and what do we have? It's monthly repayments. So I'm going to fire the method for monthly repayments. So you can access it with this dot m dot monthly repayments. If we just want to keep it simple, we can just get it with m dot monthly repayments. Absolutely fine. So it's going to, the object has been called. We're running the method that's called monthly repayments, and that's going to perform that particular calculation for us, and we're going to send that down the chute to the client. So that's what the client had actually wanted. Okay, so let's scroll this down a little bit. So we have a couple of extra little bits here for string arg1 and what's not of it. We actually don't need these anymore. So I am just going to clean up the program and get rid of them. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. I might actually put a line break in there. Okay, excuse me, that's how our program actually looks now. So I'm just going to scroll down through it and just have a quick look, make sure I'm happy. And everything looks absolutely fine, so I'm going to save that. So let's see how we're actually looking. Okay, so we have updated our run method. Super. We've been asked to add this line to our socket server loop. Well, we've already added this, but when in doubt, I'm just going back and check it. So server socket, new thread, new mortgage runnable client socket that start. It's there. Absolutely fine. Work to check though. Now we need to update the client program. So we have told the server the client's going to send you a kind of string that's saying init calculation. And once we receive this, the client's going to send you a further 3 pieces of information. And you're going to need these 3 pieces of information to be able to perform the mortgage calculation. So the 3 pieces of information were the loan percentage rate, the loan amount, and the loan duration. So the server has been set up to receive all of these, but now we actually need to update the client. We need to get this information in through our console window and then send it over to the client. So we are going to update the client program right now. Okay, so back we go to our mortgage client. So we need to add in our buffered reader standard input. That's the one thing we're missing. So right here, I'm going to go buffered reader. Just be careful of the convention now. I just want to make sure I use the exact same naming convention. So standard in STD capital IM. Okay, so we're going to use this buffered reader to read information in from the console window, and then that's going to be shooted across to the server. Okay, so now we have our we may as well just say a client program, whatever. That's our client program, doesn't really matter. So we have our client socket, we have our out, our input reader, and our input, and that's absolutely fine. We have our message that's been sent, which is out.println, initialize calculation, so that's fine, that kicks the process off. So right in this gap, right here, we need to ask the user, please enter something, which will be please enter the loan percentage rate. I type it in, hit enter. Then the program's going to say enter the loan amount. I type it in, hit enter. Then I type then I'll be prompted with enter the loan duration. I type in whatever and hit enter, and that's going to be sent across. The server will do the processing and should come back to us. So the first thing I'm going to do is system.out.println. Okay, system.out.println. I'm going to say enter the loan percentage rate. Okay, so that's going to come out into the console. So I am going to, I'll do it in 2 steps. Oh no, I'll do it in one. So difference. So if I'm sending something to the server, it's out.println. So you can kind of break these up if you want. So it's kind of really how, whatever your own preference is. So out.println, well, I actually want to send whatever the user has typed in. So the way I can get this is stdin, which is my buffered reader, dot readline. Okay, and in it comes. Now, I'm getting a little bit of a message, and that's probably going to tell me that I have missed a step. So I have my out, I have my input reader, which is input stream reader, and I have my in, which is my new buffered reader. I actually need another one for standard input. So you see how easy it is to actually just miss these. So Eclipse is going to be good. It will tell us when something's gone wrong. So I'm saying standard input is equal to new buffered reader, and it's going to be system.in. This is my new input stream. System.in. The what? New. Oh, let's see where I'm going with this now. So I've new stdin is equal to new buffered reader, and I'm taking that in as system.in. Okay, careful. So the buffered reader will only accept something, so I'm just going to read this quickly. The buffered reader will only accept something that's in the form of an input stream reader. So I need new input stream reader. Okay, so the buffered reader takes an input stream reader, and the input stream reader will actually take the input stream, which is system dot I O. System.in, sorry. I have IO on the brain today. Okay. So that leaves us with our standard input, and we have our line here. So enter the loan percentage rate, which is absolutely fine. And we need to do this for the loan amount and for the duration. So I'm just going to be a little bit lazy. Copy 1, all the same syntax, 2, 3. So this is enter the loan amount. Enter the loan amount and enter the loan duration. Okay, so let's run through it again. We kick it off. The client sends an init calculation to the server. Server receives it. That's going to be the if statement. Then we're going to fire into sending 3 variables. Enter the loan percentage rate. In the console window, I type in whatever, and out.println sends it to the server. And send what to the server? Well, it's what I typed in, and I'm getting this from stdin.readline. This gets the information in from the console window, and out.println sends it to the server. And the same happens for our loan amount and for the loan duration. Excellent. So I'm just going to bring him back up line and come down 1 line. So this time I'm actually going to say the server says whatever is in .readline. Whatever I get back in here is actually going to be the mortgage amount. So I'm going to say server says mortgage mortgage repayment is monthly repayment, whatever. So there it is, boom, and we're done. So I'm going to save that. Okay, so let's jump back to our little friend here. So we've done that, we've updated the client. Excellent. So we've got ourselves into, let's have another run. So this runs properly for us. Well, we're done. This is it. Okay, so what did we say? Always make sure that nothing's running. So, oh, okay, well, my server is actually running at the moment, so I better stop him. And no one else is running, so I can leave them sit there, or I can click the double X's, will actually close them all up. So there's nothing open now. So I click on the mortgage server, run the server. Okay, hello server, that's running. Click on the client, run. Okay, so you can see here, client program, enter the loan percentage rate. So I'm obviously getting a good deal, it's 5%. Type in 5, hit enter. Enter the loan amount. So I'm going to buy something very fancy for 200,000 euros. Hit enter. Enter the loan duration. So I'm going to pay it back over 30 years. Hit enter. Server says the mortgage repayment is 1,073 euros and 64 cents. Absolutely brilliant. That's exactly what we wanted to see. And then when I flip them over there, well, you can see that we have some basic output from the server showing that it was actually doing the calculations for us as well. So everything's running absolutely perfect. So that is the kind of basics of our example, and I've kind of just stepped through solving the problem from start to finish. So it can be easy enough to run into problems with these, and you can kind of see even along the way, it's very easy to just kind of, forget something, forget to type something, leave something out, and it can be quite difficult to debug with it. So if, if you're finding it a little bit difficult, it's probably worth running through this example a couple of times just to make sure you're familiar with it and follow along with the examples. I hope this was useful, and if you have any feedback, please let me know. Thanks, guys.